I'm very pleased to be with Jakob Frenkel, former governor of the Bank of Israel and the current chairman of JP Morgan Chase International. Welcome.
My pleasure.
Let me start by asking you for your view of the global economy. Take a look at the big picture, China, US, Europe. Where are we going in 2014?
Well, to begin with, the world is growing. When we met together here in 2009, this is a year we all want to forget, but we better remember the world was collapsing and imploding. This year, 2014, practically all regions of the world will be with a positive growth rate, some close to zero, but it's there, number one. Number two, the US, which is the largest economy in the world, is recovering. We can see now a momentum. Unemployment rate declined and it is now 6.7%. The financial sector is much healthier, more capital, less leverage, more liquidity.
The US is back.
The US is back.
But Europe?
Well, it's interesting that you are speaking of Europe immediately at the tail of the US, because the locomotive of the world, which is the US, even though it is not growing at the fastest pace, it is still the important economy, is going to carry with it many other parts of the world. In Europe, this year, will have a positive growth rate, very tiny, very, very tiny, and it has still a long way to go. Structural issues are dominating the scene. Everyone talks about the ECB, like in the US, everyone talks about the Federal Reserve. In my judgment, the issues cannot be solved by the ECB. Those are structural matters.
Now we're talking technical. Let's put this in simple language for people who are not experts. When we say ECB, we mean everybody's talking about whether the European Central Bank should use this quantitative easing, this buying of bonds to inject liquidity. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the role of the ECB, as was indicated by its president, Mario Draghi, who has done a very good job,
Yes.
is to ensure the provision of liquidity to the market.
Yes.
However, liquidity will not create jobs per se.
Right.
Liquidity will not reduce unemployment per se. Liquidity will give time
Yes.
to other measures to take place, and this is, otherwise it will be wasted.
But liquidity will help to perhaps slow down risks of deflation.
Well, if you are worried about deflation, liquidity will reduce that risk. But
Are you worried
less?
about deflation?
I'm less concerned about deflation. I'm more concerned, because the reason why I'm less concerned, semantics matters. When you hear inflation, you tell the central bank to tighten.
Right.
When you hear deflation, you tell the central bank to ease.
Right.
Where is the government?
Let's talk about the governments of
I
Europe.
will talk about the government of Europe, because the fact of the matter is that there is no government of Europe. And if you look at unemployment today, unemployment in Germany is below 7%, unemployment in Eurozone is about 12%, unemployment in Greece and Spain is close to 30%. Which one is Europe? Let the true unemployment stand up. Well, the fact is that labor markets are still very different, and the way to bring to harmonization is to ensure that there is greater flexibility in the labor market. It sounds like jargon, but it does not remove the problem.
Let's put that into simple language. Greater flexibility means?
Greater flexibility means if you see a group of people who want to work and are unemployed, you ask yourself, why are you unemployed? Is the reason that you are not having the training? Then we need to develop a job training. Is the reason that you were unemployed a year ago, you were very talented, you had a lot of skill, but now that you have been out of the productive employment, your skill became obsolete. Again, job retraining. This is the problem.
What if there's not enough domestic demand, not enough money in the economy circulating?
Well, this is an old age challenge. During the 30s, there was the very same question. I think that lessons from history show that budget deficits, for example, can provide a short-term stimulus, but they also produce debt. One of the problems that brought about the trouble that we are is excess leverage. And it is not only of the public sector, the private sector, corporate sector, banking sector, you name it. So by borrowing, we gain time, maybe, but we postpone action.
So what do we do now?
In order to have more employees, you need to induce the employers to hire them. In order to induce the employers to hire them, you must make sure that it is profitable for them. That's the name of the game.
Starting with reducing the cost of labor.
Reducing the cost of labor, improving the mobility of labor between sectors, allowing labor to move from one industry to another without losing the pension rights. These are the kind of things. This is not the ECB. This European Central
These are
Bank.
governments that need to do
Oh,
this.
yes.
And you've just described the governments of France and Italy, both of which are trying right now to do that, and they're encountering resistance from trade unions and people from the left who are afraid.
And rightly so in the short term. The role of government is to be the driver in front of the bus, not looking all the time to the back and say, where do you want to go, you passenger, you passenger, you passenger. You were elected, and don't disown that responsibility. The passengers gave you the mandate. Don't ask them every morning what you want. You were elected, look at the long term, and let me tell you, people say that sticking by your guns is politically costly. I can tell you, the public is eager to see a government that sticks by the guns, moves forwards, has a principle, and delivers it.
That's very interesting because the slogan of my new book is precisely that. It says, La gente ha capito, I politici no, l'Italia vuol cambiare davvero. The people have got it. The politicians haven't quite got it yet. Italy really wants to change. So what you're saying is leadership is the key.
Well, first of all, translate the book into English, and I can tell you I will promote it because I like the idea and I like the title.
Thank you.
And let me say, the DNA of the Italian people is not different than the DNA of the British, of the American, of the Chinese. We are all, at the end of the day, products of both our history, our society, our habits, and our principles. But deep inside, Homo economicus is driving us, and I believe that the danger is becoming cynical. The danger is saying there were false starts in the past, so therefore let's not start again. Let's have the better people come to leadership, and once they are there, you will find that the passengers will go on your bus.
One last question for Jakob Frenkel. A very interesting conversation with one of the world's leading former central bankers and experts on the world economy. When you're driving that bus, whether your name is Hollande or Renzi or Cameron, as you drive that bus, you're going to have some people at the back of the bus who are going to suffer in the short term. So what you're saying is that people have to accept that if they want leadership and they want a really good economy, there may be some sacrifice in the short term. Am I understanding correctly, or is that wrong?
Well, first of all, governments need to recognize that they cannot run by ideology. They need to be practical. And if indeed the sacrifice is too clustered, too concentrated, you need to address it. But you cannot and should not promise what cannot be delivered. But if you feel that some weak parts of the society, not everyone, but weak parts, need to have a safety net.
Shock absorbers, social shock.
You need to have safety nets that are budgeted, not open-ended, but budgeted.
Perfect. That fits with what half of Europe's governments are trying to do today. Jakob Frenkel, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank
Great
you
to
very
be
much,
with you.
and good luck.
Thank you.